And so we're now recording, which means feel free to share freely, but know that the recording's going on in case something is a little too tender to share, just so that we're all aware of that. And then I'd like to begin tonight's session the way I did previously by once again introducing Reverend LaDonna. Just for those who may be hitting this recording, I know you all were here last time for the most part, with few exceptions, and so probably already know Reverend LaDonna, but allow me to introduce her more formally as we begin. Reverend LaDonna Sanders Nkosi specializes in online cultural courses, retreats, and learning experiences. Born in Missouri and now making her home in Chicago, she was ordained in South Africa in 2003 and has been a leader with cultural community building and education for over 25 years, primarily in Chicago, where she is also lead pastor of The Gathering Chicago. She is the director of intercultural ministries with the Church of the Brethren and is currently completing a doctorate from McCormick Theological Seminary on the topic of healing racism from the inside out. She also recently published a book of poetry, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, from which we hope to hear more during our time together this evening. So without further ado, Reverend LaDonna, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Ensign. And I'm so thankful for you and everyone that makes this possible for us to have this time together. So thankful for each one of you who joined us tonight. If you could hear me well, just wave your hand so I know. And so, wow, just if you are joining us for the first time, we want to say welcome. Or if you're listening to this recording, we want to say welcome. And without further ado, I definitely want to introduce also a member of the team, Kimberly Lawson, who has been journeying with me as we have these online gatherings and has made life wonderful. So let's greet Kimberly all the way from Kent, England.
Hello, it's lovely to be here this evening. As Rev LaDonna said, I'm coming in from Kent in the United Kingdom, and it's a privilege to be here with you all. So thank you for having me.
All right. So we want to get to know everyone, and also we'll be sharing some conversation, of course, in the larger group, but we'll have some time to break up into pairs tonight with the exercise that we're going to do together. But just a few logistics I want to share, and Inton has shared many of them. One of the things is, if you would, which one do I want to share first? If you would, let me see. Well, first, let me say this. We're going to be using our journals. So hopefully you brought along a journal or a notebook. And I want to talk about this because, like, your reflections are as important as what you share in the group. And maybe, so as conversation is going or ideas flow, please write them down. I'll be sharing. I will do my best to share at least one poem tonight with the group. And a lot of my poems come as I'm sitting in meetings or in events, and words just go along the side of my journal. Also tonight, we'll have an exercise. So it'd be great if you have your journal or a notebook and a pen. Also, your Bibles. If you have a Bible, I know many people have their electronic Bibles, but we'll be getting into the scriptures. And what else? Oh, if there's a name you prefer to be called, you could put that in the chat. I'm not in the chat. I'm sorry. You could rename yourself or just let us know. And so last time I was sharing about my name, and I wanted to just let you guys know, or you all know, that my friends call me Rev. So I just put Rev there because I think the team calls me Rev. Kimberly calls me Rev. Do you call me Rev, Kimberly? So anyway, if you like to be called something, just put it in or let us know as we're having this conversation. But what I wanted to say is when you do speak tonight, if you wouldn't mind just sharing where you're coming in from, and it just helps us, since we're around all these different places, to get to know where you are. Well, that's all the logistics that I have for us tonight. How's everybody doing? You can, yeah. Okay, good. Well, one of the things we noticed last time is the time went really fast. Did you feel that? So we are gonna have some exercises that are gonna help us along this journey. I just wanna mention, and Kimberly, if we could go to the slides for a minute, just to name what we're doing here, our goals for tonight, and just to set a foundation for anyone who's joining the first time, or just a refresher, and then we'll get in our time. So this is the Ministry of Jesus, Ubuntu, and Cultural Competency for these times. And our purpose of our course together and time together is multifold. We want to share tools to increase our cultural competency, to provide environments of respect, welcome, and inclusion of all disciples of Jesus Christ and members of the human family and communities. So in other words, that hopefully includes everyone. We want to provide tools where we can have environments of respect and welcome and inclusion for everyone. And so I underscore the tools tonight because before we leave this meeting, we're going to share some tools and with you, and maybe you have some tools that you would like to share with us. Key foundation or practice that we're using, or journal or book that we're using, is Everyday Ubuntu, Living Better Together the African Way. And so we'll be listening into that in a few minutes, and then that will be the foundation of the discussion that we'll enter in coming forward. So I think that's pretty much, well, let's go ahead and let me say this. So the definition of Ubuntu, I'm a wordsmith, so I always like to say it, and you all could actually tell me because you've read, but it essentially means I am because we are, and people are people through others. And so this is a principle that we read about in Everyday Ubuntu. Thank you, Kimberly. So I thought as a way to get us into tonight's class, we would listen to Everyday Ubuntu for a few minutes, and then we will reflect on that. I know many of you have written in your journal our assignments for tonight. And so shall we take a listen together? So this, what I try to do tonight, which is interesting, is a lot of times we listen to a snippet of the assignment, which was chapters, or to read all the way through chapter 3. But I thought that we would take a listen to the epilogue, which essentially, and let me just talk about the book. It's broken up into 14 chapters. And these chapters, this is significant because in the South African Constitution, there are 14 principles. And these 14 principles, it's really interesting if you read any of the history books, or I remember reading or hearing Nelson Mandela's words and talking about how they created the Freedom Charter. Kimberly, can you put that in the chat for me? Freedom Charter, because you can look it up. And this is important as to how they're related, because, and I don't present this book or anything. I'm going to say that South Africa is a perfect society. Not saying that, but in their Freedom Charter, because of their experience with apartheid and such separation, such violence that went on, that literally in Robben Island, where not just Nelson Mandela, but many of the people of faith, all kinds of people were in prison because of their work to dismantle apartheid. they literally wrote the South African Constitution while they were captive. And I only say that because when you read the Freedom Charter, they envision a world that they hoped that they could have, where all people were included based on their class, culture, and so these 14 points. So I thought it was very interesting that Mungi Ngomani, which I hope to ask her to come back and have an updated discussion with us through the Church of the Brethren. But she modeled this book, these 14 principles, off of that. So I think that's important to know. And I appreciated how the book is written in these 14 chapters, key points. And in a little bit, we'll hear from you how it stood out for you. But tonight, we're going to just listen to a few minutes of the epilogue. And in the epilogue, it's entitled, How to Bring Ubuntu into Your Real Life. So I think, Eric, you were talking about that, how you were looking around, like, where does this exist where I am? So let's take a listen.
Epilogue, Bringing Ubuntu into Your Life. 14 Lessons from the Rainbow Nation. 1. See yourself in other people. Open your eyes and look into those of your fellow human beings. We could.
Okay, I did this last time, but I just want to say, as we're listening, do write in your journals the points that stand out to you that you hear. So it's whatever you hear that speaks to you, please record it, and we'll have time to listen to one another after we hear this.
Epilogue, Bringing Ubuntu into Your Life. 14 Lessons from the Rainbow Nation. 1. See yourself in other people. Open your eyes and look into those of your fellow human beings. We can recognize ourselves in everyone around us if we try to find the connection. There is one, especially where you least expect it. 2. Strength lies in unity. We all have wants and desires, but the most likely way of reaching our destination or goal is to join forces with those around us. There is help out there if you look for it. There are people out there with the same ideals as you. When we isolate ourselves, we go against our nature, as humans are naturally meant to live together. Explore how others can help you, and you'll definitely be pleasantly surprised. 3. Put yourself in the shoes of others. Talk to the people with whom you disagree. Imagine for a moment why they think like they do. Consider what events might have led a person to having a different viewpoint to your own. These are things we can all do to try to see life from another person's perspective. Slipping our feet into someone else's shoes can be an uncomfortable or inspiring experience. Either way, we can all gain from it. 4, choose to see the wider perspective. It is an absolute choice to decide to explore the bigger picture of what is happening in your life or the world around you. Open your mind and inquire about every angle. Seek out truth and understanding rather than deciding my way or the highway. A limited view of events isolates us and keeps us small and narrow-minded. Appreciate that almost nothing in life is black or white, but most often is a shade of gray. There is no need to feel you must own a definite opinion on any given subject. You can keep an open mind and change it as you grow. Ignorance is not bliss in the long term. Ask the questions you are curious about. Accepting the complexities makes us more compassionate people. 5, have dignity and respect for yourself and others. Having respect for oneself is an inside job and something to nurture. Do at least 1 or 2 things each day to make yourself feel good. It could be exercise, seeing a friend, meditation, or eating at least 1 good meal. Your mind and body are equally important. Then decide to afford others the same respect. If we refuse to show others dignity, we take it away from ourselves too. 6, believe in the good of everyone. If you look for the good in someone, you will find it, and inspire and encourage others to feel good about themselves. If you look to criticize, you will find something you don't like. By spotting the good in someone, we boost the self-belief of others and will see more of it. Human beings might be complicated, but by far the majority of us are good people. None of us is born knowing how to hate. We are only taught how to do so by others. Look around you today and decide to spot the good in people, in every single individual you encounter. Notice how good this makes you feel and how their goodness becomes easier to spot the more you look. 7, choose hope over optimism. A hopeful nature is not a stupid or naive one. It's a wonderful gift for yourself and others. Ubuntu shows us we all need hope in our lives. So spread it from your own life outwards. Choose to hope for the positive outcome in any given situation. When a sense of hopelessness strikes, and it does to us all at times, recognize when it's happening and allow yourself time to refocus. Explore what gives you faith in everyday life. This could be healthy eating, relying on good friendships for advice, the foundation of family, a religious or spiritual belief. Whatever it is, nurture what gives you the flame of hope in life and fan those flames.
Let's just take a moment to be able to write down anything that speaks to you before we share together. Let us prepare to come back to center. If you're still writing, please go ahead. And Kimberly, we could go ahead and come back to center. Thank you. Again, we want to welcome everyone. And if it's your first time, we're saying welcome. If it's your second time, welcome. As we listen to this segment of Everyday Ubuntu, we listened to the first 7, and there's more. But what stood out to you as you listened in tonight? And as you add your voice to the room, please be welcome to say your name and where you're checking in from. What had meaning for you? What spoke to you? Carolyn, good evening. Now, we are not hearing you. I think your mic is muted on the other side.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. So what hit me tonight was do at least 1 or 2 things each day to make you feel good and afford others the same respect, the same opportunity, right?
Wow, thank you. Thank you, Carolyn.
If you're in charge of a committee, for instance, you sometimes are really driving people to get the job done and not allowing them the privilege that would be good for yourself as well.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add in something that spoke to you? You can also add in what you read that stood out to you that you wanted to share. But who would like to add in? Eric.
Yeah, the part just out of this epilogue, what we just listened to, was just to look for the good in everyone. It's something I've always strived to do, but I fully admit it's been really hard this past year with everything that is just going on, from COVID to the racial reckoning here in the United States, and the reactions just to all of that. It's been difficult to see the good in everyone, but I know it's there, and this is just a powerful reminder that sometimes we just have to look really hard for that good.
Mhm. Thank you. That thank you for sharing. I think about, you spoke about this year or year plus or whatever we've been in here. And early on, I was aware, and my husband and I, we talked about this, that we would kind of gear up. We would mask up. We would have our hand sanitizer. We would like be ready to go out of the house. It was almost like being in battle. Like, got to be sure you stay 6 feet apart. And what I noticed was I wasn't even looking up. I think this was during our last Ubuntu discussion. And I think somewhere in the book, she challenges you to see people. And I was noticing that in order to keep social distance and like just to keep safe, in my mind, I was just like in the grocery store, like, gotta get this, until I was like, they're human beings I'm passing by. And on top of that, we're all afraid. Like, I don't want to project what I thought, but when, and so it's like when you talk about see the good in it, everyone, for me, that period taught me like how one, or I'll use an I statement, can be on the defensive. Like, it's the pandemic here. There's around the same time in Chicago, we had a series of people coming into town and destroying businesses. And so it was like, we couldn't even walk outside, So anyway, to your point, like I had to just shift my perspective, because I'm like, on the other side, people are afraid. And like, we all have these defense mechanisms. And so I think it was Colleen who was saying the book was challenging. Like, that was challenging for me. I think the section, put your self in the shoes of others, like, and then to see the good in others, that people mean well, but in many ways we may be put on the defensive of one another, be made to be afraid of one another. So I'll use all these as I statements. I won't say everyone feels this way, but that's one thing I learned. And over time, just thinking about, no, you know, people are inherently good. They're trying to survive. Anyway, that's what your comment reminded me of. Others adding into the room. Anything speak to you in this epilogue, a listening in? What about even listening in? How was it?
Well, this is Elizabeth from Patterson, Missouri. Throughout the whole reading and listening to the book, I think what hit me more than anything was how much deeper we need to get in our own lives and how we treat ourselves and how much we treat others. And if I had to say one word about the whole thing, it would be intentionality. We get so lazy and we focus inward instead of outward. And I love the statement somewhere in there. It says, be kind, for everyone is fighting a difficult battle. And you don't know what someone else's battle is. And even the smallest gesture of kindness is important. As you asked us about the tenets of Christ's ministry, and I got to thinking that Jesus, he always met people where they were, and he walked beside them. He didn't run ahead of them, and he didn't push them. He didn't push them out of the way, and he offered them a better way to live and how to conduct themselves. It didn't matter what their situation was or what state of mind they were in. And he encouraged them totally, their body, their mind, and their soul. He didn't care if it was a woman or a man, a child or the elderly. Didn't care if they were not even in their right mind. He respected each person for who they were. And he saw that they had value. And I think that's the way we need to live. Is we need to see that every person has value. Because if you see that they have value, you are going to show them that dignity and respect they deserve.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much.
I liked, well, I'm Lisa from Lidditz, Pennsylvania. And point number, I don't know what, 4 in the epilogue, choose to see the wider perspective. And where it says, ask the questions you are curious about. Sometimes, well, and there's no need to feel you must own a definite opinion on any given subject. And sometimes you feel like, well, I feel like I know what somebody thinks because, you know, I always hear the same thing. But to think about asking a question about why they think that way, or what is their experience, or, you know, how does, I might find that I can relate to them on that topic, where, you know, an opinion kind of puts me off sometimes, but being interested and curious and trying to look at it in different ways engages us together. And she says, accepting the complexities makes us more compassionate people. So I think being curious, asking questions, even if when people seem pretty determined in an opinion, in a set opinion, there might be some opening there for me to understand or relate in a better way.
Thank you, Lisa.
Lisa,
Renato.
Lisa, I appreciate your perspective there. There is a part of the prayer of Saint Francis that somehow gets at the point that we should seek to understand before we seek to be understood.
Yeah.
Which I think is very consistent with what you're saying. I think the reason why relationships fail, or a large part of the reason that relationships fail, is because we simply do not understand each other. We do not take the time to understand each other. We don't take the time to really listen. And in that, sometimes hard questions do get asked. And that question we may not think it's a hard question. Somebody else, it might strike them as a very hard question.
Yeah.
Or it might be the other way around. But either way, we must be careful not to reject any possible answers out of hand.
Yeah.
Thank you. Were you going to say something, Lisa?
No, I agree with what he said. Being open to hear, to receive what somebody else says is an important part of the conversation.
I want to also provide a bit of context for when I heard this particular part, because I actually wrote that down too, about asking questions and being curious. And that statement that you don't, what did she say? You don't always have to have an exact opinion on something. And I was like, what? And there's those moments. But I want to just paint a picture of the context that this comes from. And that is, well, we discussed last week that Ubuntu is a belief or a practice that dates all the way back to the original peoples on the southern African land. So it's ancient, okay? But I think I would propose that that's so interesting because you have people in South Africa. I remember ministering in South Africa, and at one time there were 14 official languages. There's now 11, I believe. So, and by official, then you'll go places where all these languages are being said. People are from all these various cultural backgrounds. I remember ministering in South Africa and learning about how churches and mosques and temples and traditional religions, they all came together and worked for the healing, for first of all, getting rid of apartheid. And so they would say, like one person talks about how they would have communion and the people from other religions would honor that. They wouldn't necessarily participate, but there's this way in which, and I said this, like coming up here and even now, I didn't have that experience where there's just many cultures and people and they're working together and they're not in opposition. And so I think that's an interesting statement where she says you don't have to have a formed opinion. And I don't know if it's that people don't have a formed opinion, but they don't feel the need to have to convince, the people from the other cultures to be like them. Do you all understand what I'm saying? So I think one of the reasons last year, and I really prayed about what book we would use as a discussion book. One of the reasons why I thought it was important is because you have real people who are from diverse backgrounds, even in the Christian community in South Africa, just multiple different denominations, multiple different cultures and ethnicities, operating together and really having a belief like we have to figure this out so that our society can exist. And so I just find that interesting that she said that. Anyone else want to add in before we move to our next exercise. Okay, so continue on. I wanted an opportunity where we could share together in small groups. So let me ask a question, and I think Brother Reynaldo, you mentioned it, but who remembers last week I shared one of the tools, key tools for cultural competency? Who remembers? Or you could even guess. Nancy R. from Kansas, and then Carolyn add in. Nancy.
We ask what people want to be called by.
We ask what people want to be called by. Thank you, Nancy. Anything else? Carolyn, what would you say?
I thought you were going to say, really listen.
Yes, so that's it. And actually, both of your answers are correct. I was going to say listen, but when you ask people anything, so if back to Lisa's point, you're asking curious questions, really listen to what they say. Because a lot of times we listen in order to respond. And so listening is really key. So in this next exercise, we're going to have an opportunity to listen to one another. Is that all right? Listening. So for the next exercise, if you could just find a piece of paper in your journal, and if you could divide it into 4 sections. So I don't know if you could see mine, but I have a cross in my paper. You need 4 separate sections. And if, let me just do this so you can see. Like so, and it could be vertical, it could be upside down, it could be this way. But 4 sections. This is called the 4 corners exercise. And so if you wouldn't mind, then numbering your corners 1, 2, 3, 4. And is there anybody, hopefully everyone has some paper and a pen. So for this exercise, I'm going to ask just a few questions for each quadrant. And you're going to write down whatever comes to your mind. Okay, so in a way, it's a journal-free write, or just the first things that come. When you do share this, you'll be able to share whatever you want to share. So, and we're going to share these with one other person, so in a small group. But we're going to start out in quadrant room 1 or corner 1. Name a culture you know a lot about. Name a culture you know a lot about. Now, this is your paper. If you want to put 2 or 3, it's no problem, but name at least one culture you know a lot about. And while you're doing that, and I like to just read them and then you can go back and fill them in, I'll repeat them. Number 2 is, what is a culture you would like to learn more about? So here is the culture I would like to learn more about. Again, you could put more than one if you like, but at least one culture you would like to learn more about. Number 3, and I'll repeat them, is how do you culturally identify yourself? Now for this, I will not be providing definitions for what any of this means. So just how do you culturally identify yourself? And then in the same quadrant, or this is number 3, how do others culturally identify you? Then finally, number 4, and we can come back to those. I'm going to repeat them, and we can also give examples, but the first time around, I just like to just write whatever you would like to say. And number 4, what is one key insight that everyday Ubuntu mentions that speaks to you? So you might draw this from your journal, you might draw this from wherever, but make some notes for yourself. What is one key insight that you've read or listened to from everyday Ubuntu that is really speaking to you? This is number 4, is that correct?
Yes.
And you also in number 4 can write any related scriptures that stood out to you. I know that was a homework before this exercise. If you could just list a couple of the scriptures or tenets that spoke to you. And I just want to remind everyone to, okay, I see, never mind. So can I repeat those again? Kimberly has so kindly put them in the chat. I also want to just say, if you are wouldn't mind muting, that would be great, unless you're speaking, because we're getting just a little bit of feedback. So number 1, name a culture you know a lot about. Number 2, what is a culture you'd like to learn more about? Number 3, how do you culturally identify yourself? And number 3, also, how do others culturally identify you? Number 4, what is one key insight from everyday Ubuntu that really speaks to you? And also in quadrant 4, list any relevant scriptures that stood out to you, or I know Elizabeth shared with us some tenets of the ministry of Jesus. So these are notes for you for when we'll get into conversation together in a moment. Does anybody have any questions or clarifications? So this is the 4 corners exercise. And for this next part, we're going to move into, is anybody else still writing? I just want to honor everyone's time. Are we good? So for this next exercise, we're going to get in pairs. And Ensign is going to have it so that when we get ready, you're all gonna be moved into pairs with someone. During this time, we'll have about 15 minutes for this. And it's really a sharing of your sheets. Okay, so that's why I said if there's something on here you don't want to talk about, then don't talk about it because it's just for you to read and share from your sheet. How this might be different than many of the small groups or even one-on-one conversations that we have is this time around, we're going to practice uninterrupted listening. So wherever you are, just say it with me or repeat after me, uninterrupted listening. Uninterrupted listening. And this is one way that you can honor a person or just be present with a person as they're sharing. And so, for example, let's say if Sherry and we're paired up together. Now, where does Sherry go? Okay. Is Sherry here? Okay, let me pick one other person. So let's say if Bruce and I are paired up together and we'll decide one of us is going to be person A and the other one is person B. Okay, so when you get in your group, decide that first. Okay, and then person A is going to share from their sheets all of their answers, whatever comes up for them in that first 5 minutes. Enton, are you able to tell them when 5 minutes is over? Or how does that work?
I can send a message around, yeah.
Okay, so you'll have 5 minutes of uninterrupted. That person is just listening and you're just talking. If you choose at some point, I just want to be silent, then the two of you will just be silent. Then Enton is going to tell us when it's time to switch. And then we would go to person B. And person B will share for 5 minutes. Person A's job, or someone used intentionality, is to intentionally be present with them as they share. Now, we've made enough time in case it is that you end up with 3. We'll have 15 minutes. But in the end, if you have a few minutes left, then you can talk and ask questions. But I even challenge and invite us to just be present with what's there. Does everyone understand? So person A, person B, and then N's gonna tell us when you should switch from person A and B, and then we'll bring you back when it's time. All right? So does everyone, is there anyone that doesn't understand? All right, well, let's, you ready? Okay, here we go.
Barbara Date, if you can hear me, your machine is blocking your move to room 3. Hi, Michaela. Barbara Date is supposed to be with you, but I can't get her machine to move over. So I wanted to, since you were there by yourself, I was going to quick jump in. I'm going to see if I can jump out and get her moved over, but you should have a partner soon. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, you're there by yourself. Let me go back and see if I can jump back out. Breakout rooms are closing.
Scared myself, but part of me.
We're back, everybody. Well, even as you're coming back, I know friends are coming back. So remember, we did the halfway mark stretch. So let's go ahead and do a stretch as everybody is coming back. And if you need to or would like to stand up, I encourage it. Just because we will be here for a little bit. And we didn't say at the beginning, but if you need to step away and take a break, do. We definitely want to hear how your discussions went. And Enton, is everyone back? I think so.
Yes, they are.
Okay. Well, everybody take a deep breath. I'm just trying to build some break moments in here. So, Brother Ronaldo, we send blessings to you. I think he already, oh, there you are. Yes, we send blessings to you. What a gift to be together. And we will see you again. So, coming back to center, friends, truly do take a breather and a stretch. I was wanting to ask for report backs from your time together in small groups, in pairs. I know some of you were in threes. So let me ask, what was it like to be listened to? And so for this, you'll share I statements. What was it like for you? I invite Sarah. Is there anything you want to share, Sarah, from your time? And listen, I explained last time, if you're invited and you want to pass, just say pass. Everyone is free to pass.
Sure, I can share. From an adult perspective, it was wonderful. I teach kindergarten. And so it was nice to be listened to and have good feedback from an adult perspective.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else? Sarah, is there anyone you would like to invite?
How about Carol?
I enjoy being listened to. It was fun. And I'll invite Linda Williams. I want to say anyway.
Thank you much. Good to see you. Hey, yeah, it was fun being listened to by Sister Sarah, who's right above me in my little picture display here. And I don't know, it would be the kind of thing where, like, hey, look forward to having lunch with you at annual conference. Oh yeah, not this year, but but it was yes, and thank you very much, Reverend LaDonna. It only took me a half an hour of clicking and scrolling to figure out how to join you all. Anyway, but yeah, it was a delightful experience, and thank you very much, Sarah. Okay, now let's see. Are we supposed to like tag another person?
Let me ask another question, okay? So, thank you, Linda. What about, how was the exercise for you? I'll ask a more general question and anyone can add their voice to the room. How was it for you?
It was challenging. This is Colleen from Wenatchee, Washington. It was challenging for me. But interesting to have the 4 quadrants and then to talk with Barbara about them and have her listen intently. She's an excellent listener. And so often Barbara and I just have, how are you doing? We're doing all fine. But I felt this was really a deep conversation with her. It was refreshing because I really appreciated it. It was a very deep conversation, in my opinion.
Amen, Colleen. Colleen, would you want to share more about tonight? You've used the word challenge a couple times. Do you want to share how it was challenging? And again, when I ask these probing questions, please be welcome to pass or just say, no, I don't have an answer. But anything you want to share around
it was just particularly challenging reading the 3 chapters. And I go back to the compelling vision that the Church of the Brethren is working on, and the tagline, Jesus in the neighborhood, and trying to identify what is my neighborhood. And then the perspective that you don't need to be physically connected or even geographically connected to feel community. And I remarked that with the scripture when I was talking with Barbara about Jesus always found community. He enjoyed being by himself. He went off by himself like we do, but he sought out community, specifically calling the 12 disciples. And I find community geographically distanced through my association with Living Stream Church of the Brethren and my LGBTQ community. Rarely am I with them, and I live in a very conservative town. So I appreciate that connectivity, even though I'm not next door to them.
Thank you, Colleen. Carolyn has her hand up. Carolyn, can you unmute your audio, please?
You know, thank you for reminding me, Colleen, of something that I really valued in our chapter readings, and that is the broader definition of community. Because one of the things that I think Reverend LaDonna actually mentioned was that so many people say when there's a problem that's more, they regard it as a national problem. You know, well, we don't have that here. So therefore, you know, why should we be worrying about it? But the book really did talk about community as being much broader. And you have really fleshed that out. And I appreciate that, Colleen.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anyone else want to add in about this exercise? I asked what it was like to be listened to. What was it like to intently listen? Eric.
Yep. Honestly, I thought it felt very normal. It felt very natural to me. Maybe I don't know if it's just something that I just have been trying to do or what, but it just kind of felt like it flowed. Like I didn't have to put a lot of energy or effort into it. And I don't know. I think there's some kind of beauty in that. But I also think there's beauty in the challenge too.
Thank you. Anyone else? Lorraine, were you going to say something?
Oh, Nancy and I found out we're both Kansans, and I think we got off target.
Okay. Okay. So you had something in common there.
Yeah, we had a good time, but we really did stick with the program.
Okay. Anyone else? Joy.
I thought it was really special just to have a one-on-one. You know, in our Zooms, we've had collective, we've had maybe breakouts into small group, but I couldn't recall ever having a one-on-one. And it was very nice to, at first a little uncomfortable about what you're going to say, but then things flowed, and then I enjoyed listening. And my partner was Miss Lisa. But the one-on-oneness and
there seems to be a deeper connection when we take that time.
Thank you, Joy. Anyone else? Bruce, did you have any observations you wanted to share from this exercise? And we can talk about the exercise in general too. Anyone?
It was interesting as we told our perspectives and listened to each other. We got down to the last few seconds and we realized that we both had roots and ties in Huntington, Pennsylvania, where she presently lives and where I grew up and went to college.
Wow.
And we
Joy.
both have connections with prison ministry.
Wow. So have an opportunity to listen and be present might have afforded that aha moment. Because I don't know about you all, but sometimes someone could say one thing and then I'll just be like, well, tell me more. Well, what about this? But there's more under that. Joy, were you saying something?
No, I just got excited. I went to Juniata for 2 years, and so I could relate to that particular part of it.
Okay. What about anyone else? Mark Godfrey, Mary Eller, Vicky Samlin, anyone? Mark, what about you?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting for me. I've been taking a few continuing education classes here recently, and they've been honing in on active listening in various ways. And we've had different exercises and different things that have tried to tune us in. And I don't think that anything was anywhere close to being as effective as what I experienced here. I need to be forced sometimes into that place because I'm a dialogue person. I want to communicate and I want to have conversations. So to be told you cannot talk, you will listen is helpful for me in that particular way. And I think it's an exercise that in the ministry I'm in, I definitely would like to utilize. I think it would be really effective. So I appreciated it. And once again, kind of God pinging me a little bit where I live, I guess, if you will, to kind of put me in a place where I have to think more about that. So yeah, I really appreciated it and really appreciated Paul and Mary and the dialogue we got to listen to with one another. So I think it was pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone else? I know I called on people, but just inviting you to be welcome to share if you're led to share. Paul Kaufman, Michaela Alphonse. Anyone?
It was nice to have forced listeners. I mean, it would be nice to communicate with people all the time with that kind of attention and respect for listening.
Thank you, Paul.
And I liked that, I was able to listen and that there wasn't pressure to have like follow-up questions right away. Like I can let what was said just kind of sink and think about it instead of trying to show that I'm engaged in listening by reacting right away.
Thank you, Michaela. Barbara, Nancy R, Lisa, I think I've called everyone. Anyone else want to add in? Please be welcome, Elizabeth.
This is Nancy R. I have to really work at listening because I'm always thinking, okay, what's the next question? What should I be looking for? So I always want to be one step up. So it helps me to just sit and listen.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy.
in our discussion afterwards, Michaela helped me understand that one definition of culture might be how we perceive reality.
Mm,
And I thought that was very interesting.
wow. Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Carol. Alan? I think I've called everyone. So anyone could add in. I just want to, let's kind of think about, what does this have to do with cultural competency? What does it have to do with fostering respect? What does it have to do with being present with one another? And how can we take these tools into our everyday lives? Yeah, I want to just put that out there. And remember, I said one of the key things was listening. I want to ask the group, anyone from the group share from their paper anything that they felt vulnerable sharing at first. If you did, just raise your hand. Something you felt vulnerable sharing, maybe with someone you don't know. Yes. So that's why I would say, like, when people share who they are, their culture, parts of who their identity is, or say someone says, this happens in our relationships where maybe an incident occurs that they were discriminated against, or a lot of times you'll find that people just will not say anything because it's just like, ooh, that's bringing up so much. I don't know if I want to share this. And so one way to just honor people is to listen. It doesn't mean after you're listening and being present, they're going to tell you everything, or that even we have license to ask people a lot of questions, because I'm a real advocate of, do some research yourself, but that gift of listening and really hearing. And I've found with some of the covenant relationships I have with people, it's like sometimes I don't even know what I'm thinking. And this is at work, this is at home, until I'm in a pair with someone or a group that's really listening to what I'm saying. And I'm like, oh, this is what I think. And so this is one tool that we can use to listen, and then to give that back. I mean, there's a level of mutuality, and that's really what Ubuntu is mutuality. That you are important and have dignity, as are others around you. Does anyone else want to comment on that, or comment on how any of this that we shared is relevant to cultural competency? Okay, well, we're going to go to the next thing. Mary Eller, do you want to share anything?
As my job is a chaplain, I have active listening skills that I've honed over the last decade. I enjoyed very much listening to Mark and Paul, and I found myself doing what I do every day. I have questions, but I want to hear the entire story before I interject and ask questions. So it was a good exercise, reminding me to always tamper down my questions, because I might not hear a very important facet of what's really important in that person's life. So yeah, it was a good exercise for me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. So we promised to offer some tools, and I thought that together I wanted to share a few tools, and then as a collective, we may have our own toolbox that we'll put together. So Kimberly, why don't we go to our cultural competency slides? And so for this part, I just wanted to present a few tools for us to think about, some that we've seen in this exercise, and we'll call this part Models for Cultural Competency. I think, Kimberly, before we go into the toolbox, that I suggest, let's just look at one group's model for cultural competency. Now, in preparation for this course, I had a lot of fun researching different models for cultural competency. And interestingly, many industries have cultural competency tools. So I'm going to share this model. I'm not saying it's the best model. It was just one that I appreciated. But you also can do a Google search and learn all the ways and proposals that people are talking about cultural competency. And I just want to make a couple comments about this one. And it's put out by Cultural Vision. And this Culture Vision, this is primarily for healthcare workers, but I really appreciated this model. And I think last week people spoke to this. So this is called the Building Blocks of Cultural Competence. And I'd like us to look at this guide. And so we haven't talked about this, but one way, cultural competence for me, I should tell you one, what's the word? One belief I have in going into this, which I think is important to say to you, is that culture is fun. And after we finish these graphs, I'll have us go to the scripture. But one foundational scripture for me is Genesis 1:27. So before we close out, we'll go there to that. But it simply says that you and I, we are created in the image of God. And so because of that, I see culture as not problematic, but something that God's self has created. In the same chapter that God spoke the world into being, the Bible records that we are made in the image of God. And so when we're looking at a person, even if we're looking across the globe, at the news, at a culture of people we've never met before, we can understand and know that God has created those people. And so cultural competency for me is a way of how we can learn from one another, how we can be respectful. And so Kimberly, if you could help me with the pointer. So we'll start with open attitude. It requires an open attitude. And I think the conversation in Everyday Ubuntu spoke to that. Then 2, self-awareness. So we haven't talked a lot about this, but it is present in the book. And self-awareness, meaning that you are aware of yourself, your own culture, your own biases, maybe just other things. Maybe you, like for me, you're aware of yourself. I don't want to say necessarily for me, but self-awareness is key. And so also like things that you're working on, things you want to learn. And then 3 is awareness of others. Now this is one proposal, and I'll be bringing you another proposal in the moment. But all of these are important, that you have an open attitude. So I would like to just take the Church of the Brethren, if you all don't mind. Are we all in the Church of the Brethren? I think, except for Kimberly, I don't want to make an assumption, but we all are part of the Church of the Brethren in some way. Is that correct? Is that correct? I can't see everyone.
For the most part, I'm not sure down to the final, but I think so.
Okay. I just don't want to make an assumption, but nonetheless, let's take the Church of the Brethren. And we all are from different cultures and backgrounds. I mean, whether that's ethnic cultures, whether that's national cultures, whether that's regional cultures. And so open attitude is an open attitude into how people are. Self-awareness is aware of our own self and where we are. Awareness of others is having an understanding and respect for others. And then cultural knowledge and then cultural skills is the fourth one. So they did not present this as linear, but an ongoing process of having an open attitude, being aware of yourself and places you want to learn and grow. That's why I asked the question, what cultures do you know about and what do you want to learn about? And usually I ask people, well, how are you going to learn about that? Is that through reading? Is that through relationships? So this is one model. And if you have any questions about this model, I'm happy to answer them. I didn't create it, but what I do like about it is the number one, open attitude. And I would say that often is a hindrance for people. And I won't say that people have a closed attitude, but it's more maybe anxiety. I don't know what it is. But if we understand, like for me, God has created all these people, and then God has created all the cultures. So there are nuances, the way people are. It's beautiful. But to have an open attitude, I think, is a way then to learn. And this is what this particular group talks about. So I want to open it up for questions and comments. And I also want to go to another model that we have created for this class. Are you all here with me? Just say amen.
Amen.
Okay, I want to just get to this because when I thought of Ubuntu, I realized that as a collective, we could create our own suggestions and toolboxes. But in preparation for this, I did come up with my proposal for 5 tools in a toolbox, what I call a bridge builder's toolbox, cultural bridge builder. And Kimberly, do we have that? So these are the keys. If you don't remember anything else and say this happened to me, well, I could tell stories, but I went to visit my mom for the first time in a year and a half. Ended up in the airport for 8 hours yesterday, in fact, waiting for the plane in Texas, which I knew nothing about. And I knew that we were doing this class, and I was like, Texas culture is in the building. I mean, and it's like, if you want to act like it's not, I was like, okay, let me observe. There were many cultures at work in the airport, but I was in Dallas, Texas, and I was learning about the culture. And so these are 3 keys that I suggest. Listen, which you have done today. Really listen, be present with people. Another word in listen is observe. Some people in these models say observe non-judgmentally. If that works for you, just be present, listen. The center of it is respect. And I know every day Ubuntu talks about honoring the respect and dignity of every person. And then the third one is learn. And we'll share these slides with you if that is helpful. So I want to just get in more to this toolbox. I'm going to share these, and maybe you have a few that you want to add. But as I went along with listen, respect, learn, there were 2 others I would like to add. So I would like to share, these are the tools I would suggest. 1, listen. Be intentional about listening and presence. 2, respect. Focus on and emphasize dignity and respect. 3, learn. Now, this is interesting. What might you learn here? What can you learn on the journey? So I would say every culture, every person, if you really listen, like maybe you learn something about them, or as someone already said tonight, it gives you greater insight into what they're saying. But what might you learn here? And I think these first three for me, I've spent the year being aware that people can be very defensive when it comes to culture. And really, do I have this somewhere? Yeah, it's down further, but it's like we don't, like, I don't have to advocate for myself necessarily, but just be present to learn someone else's. And then as you get into relationship, then you can learn more and ask questions. Let me just go to 4. And I added these 2 later in the week because I think for cultural competency, it's important to commit to healing and eradicating racism. That there are some schools of thought that say, let's just celebrate everybody's culture and respect everybody's culture, but then you never talk about the fact that people are discriminated based on their culture. Maybe they're economically, they don't have access to healthcare because of who they are. So that unaddressed, for me, respect means that you're acknowledging and also committed to addressing those injustices. And I know that's a whole discussion, but I would say that's really important. Number 5 then is celebrate and have fun. And one of the exercises I do, and I think I did ask the question, what culture do you know about? Like, and I would love to hear what other people want to say, but like, brethren people have culture, we have traditions. So it's like there are cultures that you should celebrate your own culture too, however you define that. But culture is something to be celebrated. And I noticed just on the journey that sometimes people will say to me, or they'll just intimate that it's somehow bad to be Black or African American, or that somehow I think it's, I don't know what they think, but I'm like, every day I celebrate that. It's great. I am studying now because it's Asian American Heritage time and celebration. So I'm reading new books and articles, and I'm like wanting to ask, how do people celebrate? How do you celebrate your culture? So culture is also something to be celebrated. And what I wrote is learn ways other people celebrate their cultures. Everyone doesn't celebrate out loud, but there may be something they do to acknowledge their culture and their cultural identity. And then this is what I wrote: see the world and people as God sees. And how do we do that? Well, we can look at the scriptures in which God, the scriptures remind us that we are made in the image of God. And so cultures are to be celebrated as well. So we can take this slide down because I want to open it up. These are some tools that I would suggest: listen, respect, learn, commit, and celebrate. I also would suggest that sometimes people like to camp out around a few of those. And that's fine, get in where you fit in. These are some tools that I would definitely suggest, and maybe you have some others. So I want to open it up to hear what people think about this model for cultural competency. Anything you want to say about the other one? Let me listen. Let's hear what you have to say. Or let me ask this. Let's just take a moment to write in your journal what comes up for you, please. And this is your journal, so whatever comes up for you, please. So if you're still writing, please continue to write. We're going to just open up for conversation. Kimberly, do you mind placing the text of the slide, listen, respect, commit, celebrate, the whole text into the chat just so people have it? And then again, we can share that with you if that is helpful. But let's hear from you. What do you hear? What do you see? What speaks to you as you hear these? And these are tools in a toolbox.
Well, I kind of wanted to add another one.
Okay, now who is this? I'm sorry, I saw Lorene, but it's Linda. Okay, just a moment. Okay, Linda, go ahead.
Lisa.
Okay, I did the raise hand thing, but it was somebody else that was starting to speak, and I'm not sure who it was.
Okay, so
It was Lisa.
Lisa?
Okay, Lisa, then Linda. Go ahead, Lisa. Thank you.
Okay, I kind of wanted to add another one to my list.
Okay.
And that was to be curious.
To be curious.
To be interested.
To be curious, to be interested.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because we're going to, let's put that in the chat, because we're going to have our toolbox recommendations. But to be curious, and what was the other one?
Well, kind of, they go together.
Interested. Perfect.
Because it's what makes me want to step out of my comfort zone.
Yes.
Curious about, and then, I need the courage to go do that. I still can't get over. I remember the first time, and this is years ago, I decided to go and visit a Hispanic church in Lancaster and go for their Sunday service. And I tried to get a friend to go with me, and I couldn't find anybody who wanted to go along or could, I don't know. And so I went myself, which is not like me. And the whole way there, I was thinking, I was afraid. I thought, what are they going to think about this Anglo? And why is she here? I thought, well, it was the dumbest thing because they were all so wonderful and welcoming. I don't know why I was feeling that way, but it was my curiosity made me do it.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to go there. And then I went several times, many times after that. But it was that initial having to take the first step, and just because I was interested and curious, and that gave me the courage to do it.
Thank you for sharing, Lisa. Also, in your comment reminds me of that one model we just looked at. Like, you're very self-aware of your process. And I appreciate that, like how you shared how you felt when you were first going, which I experienced that a lot too. Like when I'm going somewhere for the first time, or what I think of as crossing a barrier, all these fears come up, and then it's like I get there and it's like, okay. So I appreciate your sharing. Thank you. We are taking notes for what else we're going to add to this toolbox. And so we have curiosity and interest. I also heard courage. And I also heard the invitation, and know too that as you invite others, even when they don't go, a lot of the patterns that we have were set a while ago. And so your desire to cross that barrier, it just invites people to be able to do the same. Linda.
Thank you. I wrote down humility, being humble. And that would I don't know if it's kind of like a separate tool in the toolbox, or if it's listening with humility, learning with humility, however it gets woven in, basically that keeping it always present in my mind that I don't know what it is that I don't know. And that my lived experience is not your lived experience. And having the humility to recognize that I'm not the authority on you or your experiences or your perspectives. You are the authority on you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
I'm getting excited about what's forming here. These with humility, we're listening in, and I think what we can do is what we end off with is we can share it around. And so you've added humility, listening with humility, learning with humility. Anyone else? Thank you, Linda. Observations. Carolyn Lidston.
Yes. I put practice kindness and caring, paying it forward. And I heard this wonderful example. The director of the movie Moonlight, and now it's soon to be released, The Underground Railroad. His mother was a drug addict, and he was raised by a woman who called herself Grandma Minerva, but she was probably not his grandmother. And that woman and her husband was a longshoreman, took in like 5 or 6 kids at a time. They would also have adults living with them. And when they would be down on their luck for a while. And he was, I think it was Terry Gross's show, if you get that. And she said, well, did you feel loved? Did you feel like she was your mother? And he said, yes, I did. She was like a mother to me. And it's made all the difference. He also gave credit to his coaches. He was not a good football player, but he had the advantage of several coaches that treated him with respect and as if he was what he said was valuable. And so those people modeled him. So that kindness and caring and attention.
Kindness, caring, and attention.
And even the idea of paying it forward, right.
And paying it forward. Thank you. What was his name, Carolyn?
He's the director of those movies. He's going to be the director of The Underground Railroad, which is going to be on Amazon.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Others adding in, Eric. Eric, can you unmute?
Yeah, is this okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if anybody knows who Darla Deerdorf is. But she does this story circle thing, and we had her with our district policy board. And as she was going through her thing, and then as we're going through ours, I'm noticing some similarities. So I would just kind of maybe nuance a couple things, particularly listening. That, and I think we've touched on it, but to listen to understand. A lot of times we listen while we're listening, we're trying to formulate our response, or we end up reacting, or we even judge. But we should just listen to understand without formulating those responses, without reacting, without judging. I think a couple other important things I would add is just to be yourself. Come and be genuine and authentic. Speak from your experiences. Yeah, and I think another important thing to be mindful of is not only being attentive to what is being said, but also being attentive to what isn't being said. Facial expressions, body language, and that.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Barbara, Date, anything you want to add?
Yes, I would add learn to be mindful and to notice what you are noticing. That probably sounds really strange, but anyway.
Can you say more about that? Do you mind? Notice what you are noticing.
Yeah, so coaching oneself to pay attention, to notice and be mindful, and also to be monitoring and tracking that so that you can benefit from that. So it has to do with being present, but it's a certain way of being present, which is non-invasive. You know, it embodies all these other things you're mentioning, being respectful and listening and whatever, but it's with an extra eye or an extra ear that's non-intrusive. But we can learn from that in the moment or in the future.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else want to add in before we close this segment and prepare to close this time together?
Just kind of share a story real quick that I think relates to what we've been talking about. I had the opportunity during seminary to go to Thailand and Cambodia. I went with McPherson College with a group there, and we ended up going to Cambodia to Angkor Thom, to a temple kind of out in the jungle. And me being kind of who I am, I was pretty curious. There's a bunch of Buddhist monks up by this kind of hole that led into the temple. And I was like, well, I'm going to kind of go up and see what's going on and try to be respectful, but I was curious about what was happening. So I got up there to the steps and they grabbed me and took me into this temple with them. And I was like, well, all right, let's see what happens. And they walked me through their prayer service, basically put incense in my hands, put my hands together, and just had me go through the entirety of the prayer service with them. We didn't speak the same language. We didn't come from the same culture. We didn't have similar religious backgrounds, any of those things. And we didn't say a word to each other, but we spent probably 15 to 20 minutes together praying in a spot together. And it was such a cool thing. There was no judgment. There was no concern. There was no worry. None of those things happened because they were curious, I was curious, and they were willing to take somebody who was completely different than them and bring them into that sacred space. And that's something that stuck with me, and it always will. I don't know if that will ever be replicated. I hope it is in my life at some point in time, but it certainly kind of shaped how I think about bringing other folks in. If others are so willing to do that with us, it really, there's no excuse, I think, on our end to a certain extent. So don't know if that's helpful, but I was thinking about that through this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for sharing. Listen, friends, once again, we've come to the 8 o'clock moment. I don't know what happens with our time together, but so what I want to do is invite us, as we have this closing segment together, we'll just, as we did last time, I believe we had a word that everyone shared and a prayer at the end. Then we will have a few minutes to just have a virtual reception. So that way, if you want to talk across the room or share more, we're here, but we will conclude. Is that all right? And I have promised to share a poem. So would you be open to that? So I had planned to share something else, but one of the things, because we're talking about South Africa, I want to just, I always like to, yeah, so I'm going to focus on South Africa. Is that all right? So I have this collection of books or poems called Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. And it actually is my journey from the US to South Africa and back again. I used to write poems in the 4th grade. And then when I went to college and I went to journalism school, they said, get rid of that poetry mind, just the facts, ma'am. So I didn't write poems again until I first was coming back from South Africa. And then these words just poured onto the page. So I would like to, is it okay to share this?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and if we had time to do an exercise, which we don't, but you could tell me, I would have asked you, you know, as you listen, what do you learn? What do you learn? But anyway, we won't do that. So another time, but this is called Remembering South Africa. And I always say that whenever we get together, or if you come and visit us or come on one of our journeys to South Africa, you'll always hear singing. So the first part of the poem says, Sivu Salele. Sivu Salele. Just let's do, I'll say Zulu now. Sivu Salele.
Sivu Salele.
Yes, Sivu
Sivu
Salele.
Salele.
Excellent. And it means revive us. Somebody say revive us.
Revive us.
Revive us.
Revive us again, oh God, revive us again. Sivu Salele Kosu Jesu. Sivu Salele Amen. Sivu Salele Kosu Jesu. Sivu Salele. Hallelujah. Dumuluak. Hallelujah. Amen. Hallelujah. Dumuluak. Sivu Salele. Revive us again. Revive us again, oh God. Revive us again. Renew us again, oh God. Renew us again. Sivu Salele Nkosi Jesu. This is Remembering South Africa. Suddenly, in Remembering South Africa, I'm in love with my skin again. Suddenly, in Remembering South Africa, I'm in love with my skin again. Brown, black, rich, sweet, brilliant, me. Suddenly, in Remembering South Africa, I'm in love with my skin again. And I miss that here. I miss that here where black is seen as black, a spot in a sea of whiteness, an accident, a mishap, an oversight. And we must hide her. And she hides herself behind stacks and stacks of books and many big words and high-powered positions. But suddenly, in Remembering South Africa, I'm in love with my skin again, where the curvedness and the roundness and the brownness of me is seen as beautiful, is expected, is beloved, is beheld. Baked, brown, round, and beautiful. Me. Suddenly, in remembering South Africa, I'm in love with my skin again. And somehow the South African water didn't dry or ash my skin over, but the climate conditioned me, and I was vibrant and supple and alive. And my hair just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew from the nurture and nourishment there. And cold brown eyes that pierce with expression, they were not the exception, but the rule. And more than every other person looked just like me. Oh, suddenly, in remembering South Africa, I'm in love with my skin again, and I am alive again, and I am radiant again, and I am beautiful again, and I am born again, and I am me again. Amen. Si você lê com sujeito, se você lê, amen. Se você lê com sujeito, se você lê, revive us again. Amen. That's remembering South Africa. Amen.
Amen.
So we want to thank everyone for joining us today. And certainly we can have time to share anything you'd like to after we close. But one way that we have closed is an Ubuntu way. If there's a word, and I guess I would say everyone take a breath, because I know you just had the poem there. But when you think about the journey that we've had together today, and maybe you were here last week or in your reading, or anything that sticks with you, if you want to share one word that you will take from this, please do. Or one word you want to add to this, please do. And then one of our group who's led to do so will pray. So Bruce says, together.
Sacred space.
Sacred space. Anyone else?
Community.
Community. Hinton, I think we have some in the chat. Do you want to voice those?
I'd be glad to. Mary Eller says affirmation.
Affirmation.
Joyce says agape.
Agape.
Elizabeth shares intentional observation.
Intentional observation.
Vicky shares spirit.
Spirits.
Eric writes, understand.
Understand. Kimberly, do you want to add anything, or anyone else?
Unity.
Unity. Colleen, anything sticking for you that you want to add? Anyone else? Is there one who will pray? Blessed, Colleen.
Creator God, you have invited us into your presence. You are always here. It is we who need to enter this sacred space of communication and learning and insights and community, beloved, beloved community. We thank you for the gift of technology that can bring us together from all parts of the United States and the world around. For those gifted to help with the technology, and for the wisdom shared corporately from each and every voice that we have heard. Guide our thoughts and help us to understand. Help me to understand. Go with us from our various places with peace in the afternoon or evening, wherever we are, or the early morning, knowing that, again, you have invited us into your presence, into this sacred space. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And I'll just pray God's blessing on your time of, in the words of Lisa, reminds me of, I invite you to a time of discovery, to journey and discover something that you were curious about here, or culture you want to study up on, or maybe it's a relationship you want to connect in with, or a book you'd like to read. And I do want to say that with Intercultural Ministries, we are committed to assist you on that journey, especially of your cultural learning and things like that. I'm just going to say these announcements before we close out. And one question I didn't have the opportunity to ask that I would love to ask is, what questions do you have? And so if questions come up, or also that's what relationship is about. You can't always ask questions to everyone, or maybe you don't, but we're here just to if we can't answer them, to connect you with a resource that can. And then also, you all have inspired me today. I always like to listen to Everyday Ubuntu around the house. And today I was thinking, maybe we might have another Everyday Ubuntu discussion in 2021. So if you are interested in that, we did take each of the chapters a week and live with the chapters. If that's something that interests you, you can let me know, or let Into know, or McPherson College, and then we will, Intercultural Ministries can host something like that. Or maybe you're not interested in that, but there's something else you're interested in. Let us know. But I just want to say thank you. It definitely has been life-giving to gather with you in this space, and just appreciate your saying yes to this, and many blessings. So I think that ends the time, and now we're into the reception. So thanks everybody. If you have to go, God bless you so much. Joy, it's good to see you. Linda, everyone. Elizabeth, you're from Missouri. Carolyn, I'm from Missouri too. But many thanks, everyone. Vicki, feel better. So good to see you. Hope to see you again. Namaste. Shalom. Any questions or comments?
I like what you just said about a life-giving experience. Yes.
It has been. Did y'all feel that?
Yes.
I was like, I can't wait to get back to the group.
You had that 8 hours in the airport, and I lost my 25-year-old parrot today. We buried him right before this.
Oh,
yeah. I'm not quite the same as your 8 hours in the airport.
No.
But after 25 years, you get to know a fella pretty well.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, he could have lived to be 35, but he did live to be 25. So
Yes. Wow. Well, thank you for being with us.
Oh, well, it was my pleasure. And it really was a life-giving experience. And so nice to get into the book again.
Yes. It's so nice to hear you. Laureen, we can't hear you. Were you saying something? Laureen, one more time. Can you, oh wait, one more time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just said it brings back a lot of memories from things I've done with the church, for the church, working in Chicago and the Near West Side, in the Black community, being in Germany, working in refugee camps. It's just sort of the icing on the cake.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Lorraine. Were you near First Church when you were in the Near West Side? Or at Douglas Park?
I went over there for church sometimes. But no, I can't think of the street. It goes north and south through town. One of the main streets. I was right on that side.
Okay.
It's closer into town.
Is it Lake Street?
I think so. Probably.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You know,
so, Bruce, I would like to know, do you know Dr. Harriet Kaler?
Uh-oh, wait. I think
he's muted. He's muted, I think.
I think he's not here anymore.
Oh, he was right here.
He just stepped away like the moment.
Darn.
Right for you.
Yeah.
You can reach out to him though.
Yeah, because we did not realize he grew up and went to college in the town that I live
in. Wow, that's so cool. We didn't comment on that, but it's so neat how you all found commonalities as you listen to each other.
Right.
Well, Sister Carol, what do you have to say about all this? How has your time been?
I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to know Michaela a little tonight.
Okay, good.
She lives in Miami, and we used to pass through Miami on our way to Puerto Rico. We drive down there back in the 50s. Then later we went to Baltimore or somewhere else, but we used to fly out of Miami.
Cool. Ensign, I forgot to ask everyone, and Kimberly, I always ask you to remind me. I don't know what I forgot to mention it, but usually toward the end, I ask if it's okay for us to take a group photo.
Oh.
Fortunately, we have the whole recording, so we've got any number of group photos.
Good. So do we need to ask them, is it okay in the next email if we take their picture?
The question is how you want to use it.
Well, I like to, I do post it on social media, but if there's people, and we can, if they say, no, I don't want to be on there, then we can make it so they're not on there. Like it could be edited. If not,
So I can include that in the email.
Yeah, to please let us know if they prefer their picture to not be shared. I don't know how you word that. But we can also blot out the names as well. It's very simple to do. But I don't know. It's such a beautiful memory to see everyone together.
And I wanted to say thank you so much for graciously welcoming me to join you this week, since I was not available last week. And I apologize that it took me a half an hour of clicking and fumbling and bumbling before I finally got the connection made.
It's okay. The point is you made it.
Finally. And thank you very much for graciously welcoming me. And the everyday Ubuntu, just to display my ignorance here, you said something about listening to it. So you have, okay, it's a physical book and it is also like a book on audio.
Yes, there's 3 versions. There's the book, there's the audio book, and there's also the Kindle.
Okay.
And I don't know, Barbara. Go ahead, Carolyn. You can talk about. Who's talking? Is that Lorraine?
I said buy it if you can.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful book.
It is, and there's a couple books in my life where I'm not. Anyway, there's a couple books that it's a total different experience for me when I listen to the book than reading it. But reading it is quite enjoyable as well. So you can, I always say for the options because some people, you know, prefer one or the other. Thank you, Kimberly. Good night.
Good night. Oh, good night.
Blessings to you.
Thank you.
Or should we say good morning?
Up with us.
Yes. And happy birthday to you, Kimberly.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, birthday. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.
Birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Yes.
Happy birthday to you and many more. And Carol, good to see you again.
You too.
And Barbara and Anton, I can only see 4 people at a time on my screen. Anyway, thank you, Reverend LaDonna. Thank you very much.
Welcome. It's so good to be with you and hope to see you again.
Looking forward.
Reverend LaDonna, where can we buy your poetry books?
Oh, that's what I meant to say. So, of course, you can get it on Amazon, but you can also go to this website, which I'll put in the chat.
Oh, good. I'm trying to avoid Amazon.
Yeah, and that's I don't even like publicly say that because I sometimes don't know what the latest controversy is with them, but you can go to this. This is directly to the books, or if you just go to the website.
Okay.
And we don't have an audio version yet. We do have a electronic version as well as a
Oh, good. Thank you.
version. And but we're working on an audio because a lot of these poems we've been using for journaling and just so we'll be working on that. But thank you for asking.
Great.
All right. Well, is anything else in anyone's hearts before we close out? It's just nice to be together, huh?
Yeah. Well, God bless and hopefully till soon. I'm going to scoot.
Okay. Good to be with you. Take good care.
Night, everybody.
Good night. Good night, Mark.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye now.
So I
Okay.
think
Bye, Carolyn.
Good night.
Good night,
Peace, Carolyn. Sorry about your parent.
Yeah.
Yeah. His name was Jiggy. He was named by my grandson because he liked to jiggle up and down.
Well, blessings to you. Let's keep in touch.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. I think it's going to be